replicability? The replicability. Hey guys, today I want to talk about my constructions unit. As you can see here, there is some limitations to the methods that I currently use, and for a while I've been trying to get into 3D printing for multiple reasons. So the first reason that I considered it was I really wanted to have a piece that was made out of metal. The only way I could figure this out was if you use a casting method, which means you have to have the piece in wax, and the only way I worked out that I could have it in wax was perhaps 3D printing in wax. So this was maybe 3-4 years ago, before kind of this big popular 3D printing boom went off, or maybe I was just ignorant of it. But that was my initial idea, which sparked me to kind of do a bit of research and try and understand what's going on. So I was actually bitten in the sense that I bought a printer and the company went bust, and it took me 6 months to get my money back. So for 2 years or something I was a bit put off. But say 6 months ago or so, I actually got my first 3D printer, and I've been playing around with it and kind of trying to learn how to use the 3D software and everything. The 3D side on the computer I'm a bit, well, I'm definitely a beginner still, so I'm just learning how to do that right now. So the first reason was solidity. So you can then utilize the surface in a completely different way. When I make these, it's with a very kind of floppy string. You know, there's no certain shapes that I want to make aren't possible with the processes that I currently use. So with 3D printing, the idea is that it'll actually open up a completely different world, so to speak. The second reason is the replicability. Yeah, so the replicability of a piece means that in the traditional sense, when and to use a historical reference, you know, when people used to make an oil painting, they might sell that for say 100 units of whatever, 100 gold nuggets. Okay, but you might make 100 prints or etchings or lithographs of that and sell them for 10 gold nuggets each. That way, if you sell 100 at 10, you end up with 1,000 gold nuggets at the end, rather than the 100 which you would have got if you had just made and sold your oil painting. This way, the prints allow you to lower the cost and increase the revenue. And obviously, whilst we live in this capitalistic system where you need money to keep the electricity on, yeah, it's necessary to kind of experiment with those ways and routes. And for me, making my art as accessible as possible to people are interested, and this piece costs X, but this piece costs half of what X costs, then yeah, obviously they're going to go for that if they're interested. So there's a good friend of mine who's interested in a piece that utilizes 3D printing, and I'm really starting to kind of crack on with the production of it now. So this week I've been trying to figure out how to digitally render, how to edit the scans that I've got. Oh, go back one step back. I have a 3D scanner as well, because my original idea is you take a finished piece of work, for example this piece, you scan it with the scanner. I'm sure there'll be a clip of me doing that somewhere. If not, then I'm afraid you're still looking at my face. And then you feed it into the computer, edit it up, clean it up digitally, which sounds really simple, but it's actually very complicated. And then, well, it is for a layman like me. And then you can cut it into sections digitally again, print it in sections. Then I'll hopefully have it in plastic. At this moment in time, I don't have that. But again, on here, perhaps I will, and I can show you a lovely clip of it now. Yeah, and then what you've done is skip that step. Instead of making it with string, you've made that bit with plastic. I'm sure there'll be some sort of melting the plastic together or attaching it with wire and adding certain bits of string over it to kind of blend it. And then once it's painted, I assume that it'll look very similar to the original to the original style that I'm currently utilising. So that's the plan for this week. Today I've been playing around with the digital, and yeah, I imagine I'll cut to the studio now and show you what I've been doing for the rest of the week. Hey guys, so down in the studio now. Apologies for the sound in the background, but the 3D printer is going off. That's, I guess, one of the trade-offs for doing a video about 3D printing. It's also about 3 degrees outside, or was it -3? It's freezing anyway. And down here there's no heating. There is a hole behind this fan that leads out directly onto the street, so essentially there's a breeze the entire time. But that's, again, the cost for a studio in a basement with ventilation the way I set up. I'm even wearing gloves. Anyway, the print seems to be getting along. This is what's there so far. And to be quite honest, this is a test print. So I did a scan, I did lots of scans a while back, but they were on an old computer, and I explained the other day about how a lot of files got corrupted, and I'm pretty sure the scans that I wanted of the triangle pieces are corrupted because they're in the wrong format. So I have this one, and I'm going to print this one first to determine whether or not the process I want to use is viable. If this then prints, then I can continue with my plan. Normally I would then just continue to print with the files, but they've been corrupted, so I have to retake them, I have to rescan them. One of the problems with scanning is it has to be with a matte surface. I work in gloss, which means I've got to repaint the gloss paint into a matte before I can even scan them, before I can even print them. So it's a lot of work, and I want to determine first whether this is even a viable process, and if not, then well, I'll meet that if it comes. So I'm going to let this continue to print and show you what happens. Okay, this was the result, and at first this looks quite bad, but in reality there was actually quite a lot of promise. So if I take some of the, if I do some close-ups of some of the bits that were printed, you get close-up. Now, the reason I think it's got potential in this is because it's clearly printing something that looks quite organic and something that I've scanned. Something that looks like this, sorry, and I feel that this has an organic quality to it, not to confuse organic with, I'm sure you get what I mean. It didn't print out perfectly, which, to be honest, I wasn't expecting. That would have been lovely, but you know, it is what it is, and there's a bit more work required and a few more processes to get to a point that I'm happy with. When you, let's rewind a little bit. When you scan, you build up a three-dimensional surface. When you look at it on the computer, it looks somewhat similar to the reality that you've scanned. This is made up of, I suppose in a similar sense, you know, the pixels that you have on your screen all make up an image. This is made up, instead of dots, it's made up of tiny triangles. All these triangles make up, what's it called? I think it's called a matrix. Google says it's called a matrix. So you build up a matrix of this object, and when you look at it on the computer, I mean, it looks fine, but clearly, because I'm not digitally modeling it from scratch, like if you were to make a square digitally, a cube digitally, sorry, you'd have the perfect, everything would be attached and it would all be, it would all print perfectly. But mine clearly isn't attached. There are triangles all floating and disconnected to each other, and you know, when I look at it on the computer it looks fine, but when it prints, the printer is coming up with a series of errors. So my next option is to run it through some digital software that solidifies it. So it takes all those triangles and somehow meshes them all together, and the end result digitally looks quite similar. And if this prints, I'll be very happy with it, because it's, I can take that and work with it and then create something that looks exactly what I'm after. So that will be the next step for next week. I've run out of time this week to show you, so sorry I've got no mind-blowing end result. So I just want to go back one step. I've got software that Again, I don't understand any of this. I'm trying to work out what to do on my way, and there's only so many YouTube tutorials you can watch before you've just got to try it out for yourself. The printing software gives a rough estimate, well actually it gives a very precise estimate of how long it's going to print. This precise estimate was way off the other day. It predicted like 4 hours and it was 7 or 8 hours. It was, you know, close to 50% more time than was predicted. And the logical conclusion I drew was the software is built for a printer that I'm not using. I'm using a different one. I've manually input the dimensions of my printer, and obviously the printer that it's designed for works a lot faster than mine does, around 50% more. And so it should. I mean, the printer that it's designed for is about 2,000 euros, and my printer was like 300 or 400 euros. So it's, you know, it's much cheaper. So you've got to expect some sort of trade-off there, I suppose. Anyway, the estimate for the print that I now have is 9 hours. So if I take into account the new calculation, it comes, you know, somewhere in the range of 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 hours. So I'm not going to print that today. I might even bring the printer back here to the apartment so we can let it run, you know, while, because being down in the studio for 18 hours in the freezing cold isn't something that really excites me. I tend to go down there, you know, for work, an 8-hour day, 10-hour day, 12-hour day, but 16, 17, 18 hours is pushing it. So that's all for this week, and I shall see you next week, hopefully, with a nice, pretty, printed, 3D printed version of my artwork. Okay.